In a politically charged landscape, the recent comments by President Donald Trump highlight a complex and often controversial vision for America. The dialogue surrounding his administration is not just about policy but also about the ideological framework that underpins the ideal MAGA man. This concept, presented through a satirical lens by USA Today columnist Rex Huppke, reflects a troubling embrace of authoritarianism, dismissal of truth, and a peculiar admiration for figures like Vladimir Putin. Huppke's portrayal of the ideal MAGA man serves as a stark critique of the values espoused by Trump and his supporters. According to Huppke, this archetype is characterized by a denial of vulnerability, a rejection of government support, and a blind allegiance to Trump himself, whom they elevate to a near mythical status. In a recent interview, Secretary of State Marco Rubio echoed this sentiment, claiming that Trump is the only leader in the world capable of brokering peace, particularly in the context of the ongoing war in Ukraine. This rhetoric not only glorifies Trump but also undermines the contributions of international allies and the complex realities of geopolitical conflicts. The commentary takes a sharp turn when discussing the ideal MAGA man's relationship with the truth. Huppke asserts that to embody this identity, one must abandon factual reality in favor of Trump's assertions, regardless of their veracity. This is evident in Trump's recent claims about his approval ratings, which starkly contrast with independent polling data showing a much lower public favorability. Such dissonance raises questions about the implications for civic discourse and democratic accountability. Furthermore, the ideal MAGA man is portrayed as having a paradoxical admiration for Putin. A relationship that not only confounds traditional American values but also casts a shadow over the United States foreign policy. Trump's recent statements about the war in Ukraine suggest a desire to negotiate peace, but they also reflect a troubling willingness to overlook Russia's aggressive actions. During a meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, Trump expressed optimism about a potential resolution, stating that he believed Putin would welcome the involvement of European peacekeepers. Macron, however, cautioned against any agreement that might undermine Ukraine's sovereignty, emphasizing the need for verified security guarantees. This juxtaposition of perspectives illustrates a broader tension within Trump's approach to international relations. While he seeks to position himself as a peacemaker, his administration's actions often contradict established diplomatic norms and principles. The split between the U.S. and its European allies at the United Nations, where the U.S. abstained from condemning Russia, underscores the shifting dynamics of American foreign policy under Trump's leadership. As the political landscape continues to evolve, the implications of this ideal MAGA man archetype extend beyond rhetoric. It challenges the very fabric of American democracy, raising critical questions about the future of truth, accountability, and international collaboration. The potential for a recalibrated relationship with Putin, as hinted by Trump, poses significant risks not only to Ukraine but also to the established order that has underpinned global stability since World War II. Looking ahead, the ongoing dialogue surrounding Trump's vision will likely influence the upcoming elections and the broader political discourse in the United States. As America grapples with these complex issues, the need for clarity and truth in political communication becomes more pressing than ever. With Trump's administration poised to shape the future of American identity and international relations, the question remains: what kind of America will emerge from this ideological crucible? In a move that underscores his administration's aggressive trade policy, President Donald Trump announced that the planned tariffs on imports from Canada and Mexico will proceed as scheduled following a temporary delay. Speaking at a press conference on February 24, 2025, Trump affirmed the tariffs are going forward on time, on schedule, emphasizing his administration's intention to impose reciprocal tariffs aimed at addressing what he perceives as unfair trade practices by the neighboring nations. The tariffs, which Trump signed into effect on February 1, include a hefty 25% levy on various products from Mexico and a 10% duty specifically targeting Canadian energy imports. These measures were initially put on hold for 30 days after commitments from Mexican President Claudia Sheinbaum and Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau to enhance border security and combat drug trafficking. However, Trump is adamant that the U.S. has been taken advantage of and that these tariffs are necessary to reclaim economic footing. The president's stance is part of a broader strategy that includes his administration's ongoing negotiations with both countries. Trump stated, "We're going to make up a lot of territory," in reference to the trade imbalance he has long criticized. This sharp turn in trade policy has sparked concerns of retaliation from both Canada and Mexico, who had previously indicated plans to impose their own tariffs on American goods. The looming implementation of these tariffs comes amidst a backdrop of escalating tensions not just with neighboring nations but also with China, where Trump has already enacted similar tariffs. His administration's approach has raised fears of a potential trade war that could impact key industries and consumers alike. The situation is further complicated by the fact that both Canada and Mexico are among the U.S.'s closest allies and top trading partners, making the prospect of a tit-for-tat tariff escalation particularly alarming for economic analysts. In the political arena, Trump's rhetoric continues to draw scrutiny. He recently echoed sentiments reminiscent of historical figures, arguing that actions taken to save the country should not be considered illegal. This declaration, made on his Truth Social platform, has attracted criticism from political rivals who view it as an overreach of executive power. Critics such as Senator Adam Schiff have labeled such statements as indicative of authoritarian tendencies, raising serious questions about the implications for the rule of law in the U.S. As the tariffs are set to take effect, the fallout from this policy shift will likely reverberate throughout the economy, affecting everything from consumer prices to international relations. The implications for trade negotiations with both Canada and Mexico remain uncertain, as officials from both countries have already hinted at potential retaliatory measures. Looking ahead, the unfolding situation will be closely monitored, not only for its immediate economic impact but also for how it shapes the political landscape as Trump continues to assert his vision of America's trade policy. As negotiations progress, the potential for compromise remains, but the stakes are high, and the outcome could set a precedent for future trade relations. On February 24, 2025, President Donald Trump met with French President Emmanuel Macron, marking a significant moment on the third anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. During their discussions, Trump expressed optimism that the protracted conflict might soon reach an endgame, a sentiment that resonated amidst growing concerns regarding transatlantic relations and U.S. foreign policy direction. Trump's remarks came as he suggested that Russian President Vladimir Putin would be open to the idea of European peacekeepers in Ukraine as part of a potential diplomatic settlement. "Yeah, he will accept it," Trump stated, indicating that he believed Putin was not seeking to perpetuate the war. His comments were framed by the context of urgent negotiations, with Trump asserting that he hoped for a resolution within weeks. He also mentioned that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky might soon visit the U.S. to finalize an agreement that would allow American access to Ukraine's critical mineral resources. While Trump painted a picture of a nearing resolution, Macron adopted a more cautious stance. He emphasized the importance of ensuring that any potential peace agreement would not result in Ukraine's capitulation. "This peace must not mean a surrender of Ukraine," Macron stated, firmly underscoring the necessity of verified security guarantees for Ukraine in any deal. This divergence in tone highlighted the complexities of the diplomatic landscape, where France continues to advocate for Europe's strategic interests. The meeting underscored a broader shift in American foreign policy under Trump, who has notably shifted focus away from traditional European leadership. His administration's recent moves, which include abstaining from UN resolutions condemning Russia as the aggressor in the Ukraine conflict, have raised significant concerns among European allies. Trump's assertion that he seeks to bring Russia back into the G7 fold, a group it was expelled from following its annexation of Crimea, reflects a dramatic departure from the post-World War II consensus on dealing with aggressor states. As Trump navigates this new terrain, he faces criticism from both domestic and international fronts. Former U.S. diplomats and analysts have warned that abandoning decades of established foreign policy principles risks undermining global stability. Ian Kelly, a former U.S. ambassador, remarked, "The only conclusion you can draw is that 80 years of policy in standing up against aggressors has just been blown up without any sort of discussion or reflection." In parallel, the political landscape within the U.S. is evolving. Governor Janet Mills of Maine recently made headlines after challenging Trump over his executive order banning transgender athletes from competing in women's sports. Her bold retort, "See you in court," during a White House meeting has thrust her into the national spotlight and exemplifies the increasing tensions between state and federal authority under Trump's administration. As the world watches, the implications of Trump's approach to diplomacy and domestic governance continue to unfold. The upcoming meeting with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer and the potential visit from Zelensky promise further developments in both U.S. foreign policy and the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. With key players engaging in complex negotiations, the international community remains vigilant, aware that the outcomes could reshape alliances and geopolitical dynamics for years to come. In a surprising turn of events, the intersection of global geopolitics and domestic economic policy has taken center stage as President Donald Trump's administration extends an unexpected lifeline to the Russian economy amidst ongoing tensions from the war in Ukraine. Following 3 tumultuous years marked by sanctions and international isolation, recent developments suggest a potential thaw in relations, raising eyebrows and questions about the motivations behind such a shift. Reports indicate that Trump, now in his second term, is pursuing a foreign policy strategy that includes direct negotiations with Russia aimed at resolving the conflict in Ukraine. A recent poll conducted by Harvard Capps Harris revealed significant support among Americans for this approach, with 60% of respondents endorsing direct U.S. negotiations with Russia to end the war. This aligns with Trump's broader agenda, which appears to prioritize nationalistic policies while simultaneously engaging with adversaries in a manner reminiscent of past administrations. The implications of this strategy are far-reaching. By easing the economic pressures previously imposed on Russia, Trump is not only reshaping the narrative surrounding U.S.-Russia relations but also potentially influencing global economic dynamics. The president's willingness to consider a more conciliatory approach has sparked debate among analysts, with some arguing that it could lead to a more stable geopolitical landscape while others caution that it may embolden authoritarian regimes. As domestic sentiments evolve, Americans have expressed a mixed but generally optimistic view of the economy under Trump's leadership. A month into his presidency, interviews conducted across the nation reveal a populace grappling with complex feelings about the state of the economy. Many voters who prioritized issues like immigration and economic reform in the November 2024 elections now find themselves reflecting on the initial impacts of Trump's policies. For instance, a plurality of those surveyed indicated they believe the economy is strong, the highest confidence level since 2021. Amidst this backdrop, Trump's administration has been active in promoting a narrative of economic resurgence. According to the aforementioned poll, 48% of Americans perceive the economy as robust, and many believe that Trump's policies will lead to improved financial conditions for them personally. Support for his agenda remains substantial, with key initiatives such as rooting out governmental waste and enhancing border security receiving overwhelming backing. Critically, Trump's approach has raised parallels to historical political dynamics, notably those seen under Vladimir Putin in Russia. Observers have noted a striking similarity in how both leaders engage with business leaders and the media, often demanding loyalty in exchange for favor. A recent meeting between Trump advisor Stephen Miller and Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg, where Zuckerberg was reportedly encouraged to align with Trump's agenda under threat of scrutiny, underscores this troubling resemblance. As the administration navigates this complex web of domestic pressures and international relations, the potential outcomes remain uncertain. The administration's actions could either restore some degree of economic stability to Russia or risk further complicating the geopolitical landscape. As Americans continue to assess the implications of Trump's policies on their lives, the coming months will be crucial in determining whether this approach will yield the promised prosperity or deepen existing divisions both at home and abroad. with the world watching closely. Trump's next moves will undoubtedly shape not only the future of US-Russia relations but also the broader narrative of his presidency. In a dramatic turn of events within the US military leadership, Congressman John Garamendi has expressed grave concerns over President Donald Trump's recent dismissals of key military figures. In a statement released on February 24, 2025, Garamendi, a senior member of the House Armed Services Committee, described the firings of high-ranking officials, including Joint Chiefs Chairman General Charles Q. Brown Jr., Chief of Naval Operations Admiral Lisa Franchetti, and Vice Chief of Staff of the U.S. Air Force General James Slife, as a Friday night massacre that threatens national security and undermines military readiness. This purge is not only unprecedented but follows a disturbing partisan pattern that this administration has taken since its inauguration, Garamendi remarked, highlighting the removal of experienced leaders as a troubling move driven by loyalty to a political agenda rather than merit. He specifically referenced the abrupt firing of Admiral Linda Fagan, who was given just 3 hours' notice to vacate her position, as emblematic of the chaos permeating the military under Trump's administration. Garamendi's critique extends to the implications of these dismissals, which he argues compromise the effectiveness of the military's chain of command. He pointed out that the leaders removed were chosen for their competence and ability to foster a cohesive fighting force. The readiness of the military will be compromised, he stated, emphasizing the potential risks to national security that could arise from such drastic personnel changes. The concerns voiced by Garamendi come at a time when the administration is simultaneously pivoting its focus toward ambitious defense initiatives. The Space Force has recently established a technical integrated planning team to explore technological capabilities aimed at realizing Trump's vision for a homeland missile defense system dubbed Iron Dome for America. This initiative, tasked to Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, aims to create a multi-layered missile defense architecture that relies heavily on space-based technologies. Chief of Space Operations General Chance Saltzman noted that this team is currently assessing various space systems, their technological readiness, and identifying capability gaps. We are leaning forward establishing this technical IPT to start thinking about it from an overarching perspective, Saltzman stated, indicating the urgency of developing a strategy to present to the President. The Space Force's active involvement in this initiative underscores the administration's commitment to enhancing missile defense capabilities even as it faces criticism for its leadership choices. As the fallout from these military leadership changes continues to unfold, Garamendi's remarks reflect a broader unease regarding the stability and effectiveness of U.S. military operations. The juxtaposition of significant personnel turnover against the backdrop of ambitious defense initiatives raises questions about the future direction of the military and its ability to respond to emerging threats. Looking ahead, it remains to be seen how these leadership changes will affect the operational readiness of the military and the implementation of Trump's defense strategies. The administration's reliance on a loyalist approach may further deepen divisions within military ranks. While the Space Force's endeavors to fortify missile defense systems will face their own set of challenges as they seek to translate vision into reality. As these developments unfold, the intersection of military leadership and defense policy will undoubtedly be a focal point for lawmakers and analysts alike. As the geopolitical landscape shifts dramatically, the upcoming meetings between French President Emmanuel Macron, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and former President Donald Trump in Washington take on critical significance. With the third anniversary of Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine approaching, the stakes have never been higher for both the transatlantic alliance and the ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe. The leaders seasoned in navigating Trump's unpredictable diplomacy now face a new set of challenges that threaten to unravel decades of cooperative security in Europe. In recent weeks, Trump's rhetoric surrounding Ukraine has raised alarms. His characterization of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky as a dictator and his overtures to Russia signal a profound shift in American diplomacy that could have lasting repercussions. "This is the moment of truth," remarked former Australian Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, emphasizing the need for Macron and Starmer to confront Trump directly about his stance on Ukraine. The fear is palpable among European leaders that Trump may prioritize a quick resolution to the conflict, potentially at the expense of Ukraine's sovereignty and security. Historically, Macron and Starmer have employed charm offensives to engage with Trump, but the effectiveness of such strategies is now in doubt. Trump, emboldened by a domestic political landscape that often seems to favor his isolationist tendencies, now views European allies as freeloaders. His recent comments suggest that he expects Europe to significantly increase its defense spending, while also implying that Ukraine should repay the financial aid it has received from the US. Analysts fear that this perspective could lead to negotiations that undermine Ukraine's position, as Trump appears more willing to negotiate with Russia than to support its beleaguered ally. For both Macron and Starmer, the task at hand is twofold: to advocate for Ukraine while simultaneously preserving the fragile transatlantic partnership. Macron in particular has been vocal about the necessity of maintaining a robust security framework for Ukraine. During his recent visit to Washington, he underscored the importance of not allowing peace to come at the cost of Ukraine's freedom. Peace must not mean a surrender of Ukraine, he asserted, aiming to recalibrate the dialogue with Trump towards a more collaborative approach. The nuances of the upcoming discussions are compounded by the backdrop of ongoing negotiations between Trump's administration and Russian officials, which have notably excluded Ukrainian representation. This exclusion raises serious questions about the legitimacy and sustainability of any peace deal that might emerge. Diplomats and analysts alike are concerned that a rushed agreement could result in a return to the pre-war status quo, emboldening both Moscow and Beijing while leaving Ukraine vulnerable. As Europe prepares for further discussions, the possibility of a European-led peacekeeping force is being explored. Such a force would require American backing for credibility, yet whether Trump is willing to provide substantial support remains uncertain. The complexities of this situation are further exemplified by Trump's past dealings, where the emphasis was often placed on immediate gains rather than long-term stability. Moreover, the looming shadow of competition with China adds another layer of urgency to the discussions. Experts have warned that a conciliatory approach toward Russia might inadvertently strengthen China's position. If you make peace or impose peace in Europe on terms favorable to Russia, that actually makes it harder for you to deal with China, cautioned Nigel Gould-Davies, a former British ambassador. In tandem with these developments, the environmental agenda is also at the forefront as global leaders gather in Rome for a summit on biodiversity. The stark contrast between Trump's previous administration's approach and current multinational efforts highlights the multifaceted challenges that global leaders must navigate. Under Trump, the U.S. withdrew from key environmental agreements, and his return to power is expected to further complicate international cooperation on climate issues. As Macron and Starmer prepare to meet with Trump, their strategies will undoubtedly reflect the precarious balance of advocating for Ukraine's sovereignty while attempting to salvage a semblance of transatlantic unity. The outcomes of these meetings could shape not only the future of Ukraine but also the broader geopolitical order in Europe and beyond. The world watches closely, aware that the decisions made in the coming days will reverberate for years to come. The question remains: will the leaders manage to align their interests, or will the shifting rules of engagement lead to a fractured alliance and a more precarious global landscape?